So let's think about this from, what the industry itself says is that this is a technology that will have not just gigantic economic implications, but gigantic security implications, right? That they're already finding evidence this is technology that can help you do cybersecurity attacks, that can help maybe even with development of sort of chemical or biological weapons. That sounds like something that the government needs to step in, right? There needs to be some regulation of that when you talk about those kinds of risks. So then if you look at the industries and the areas where that risk has been successfully managed, the aviation just stands out. It's just head and shoulders above everyone else. I would say that if you could, you could tell people 100 years ago that you could go from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the world in 24 hours in safety so complete that it is safer to be on the airplane than driving to and from the airport. And the worst thing that would happen to you is you would complain about the quality of the pretzels. They would say that's a miracle. That is an astonishing achievement. And you cannot separate out that level of success and that level of innovation from the success of the FAA, the American regulatory agency, which has just led the world in regulatory safety. So if we've done so well with such an important industry, I think we can learn from that.
Is an argument to be made, Gautam, that we as society, it might be too late to regulate AI? Maybe it's already kind of out there?
So it is out there, but it's not. But the question is, it might be too late to eliminate all of the potential harms. But if we're looking at the curve and the curve keeps getting steeper and moving faster, it's not too late to obviate the worst ones, right? So the really big risks aren't there yet. You hear people talking about AI's use in biological weapons. That's a place where I've published articles. And we're still quite a few years away from that, right? So working with biological systems still involves a lot of handwork, it involves people, it involves a lot of sort of tacit skills. That's there. But it is going away. So we want to have these regulatory barriers in place before we lose the safety that we sort of inherited.
So Chinese company Moonshot released Kimi K3, and we talked about this AI model and how potentially disruptive it could be. Do we think that China is going to move faster than the U.S. on regulating AI?
So this is a fascinating question, and there's clearly a lot of debate in China, and the Chinese regulatory state is quite advanced, and they have a deference to sort of technical expertise that we don't, that might allow them to do that. But when we think about these open weights models that are coming out of China, however impressive they are also very clearly sort of behind what the United States has. And in quite a few cases, they seem to be heavily based on American models, so much so that if you take Kimi and you ask it, what is your name? Its answer will be, my name is Claude by Anthropic, which is kind of a flag as to where they might have gotten that data from, right? And so what I would say is in this duality, what we've learned is aviation is an incredibly cooperative space, right? It's both competitive and cooperative. Everyone wants to have the world's leading airplane makers. It wants to have the world's leading airlines, but they also understand that we've all got to work together in order to make those safe. And what the FAA was able to do was to create international norms of cooperation by being the best regulatory agency in the world. So everyone in the world sort of looked at the FAA and took their lead from the FAA. That again is the same model we can do here, where we can get the Chinese and us to agree on a regulatory harmonization that might make it safe for everybody, because we know they can, because we've done it before.
What has China said on this matter, if anything, as it relates to just broadly regulating or controlling AI?
Yeah, there have been some really interesting discussions, but it hasn't come out yet, right? So it's pretty clear that they have some concerns about the AI systems and their willingness to sort of talk about issues like Tiananmen Square. They've cracked down on that and made it much more difficult for their systems to do that. There are a bunch of other areas where they've talked about it, but so far it's been almost a surprisingly light touch. I think at least in part because the Chinese attitude towards these systems is very different from ours, right? The Chinese AI community is not consumed with the possibility of super intelligence or ending the world. They're sort of like, we're building these things and then we'll be able to apply them in factories and make our factories more efficient. That is a lot less likely to generate fear and, might actually be more likely to generate short-term economic returns too.
Okay, Europe is not exactly the leading edge of AI innovation, but Europe is very good on regulation. They spend a lot of time on that. Has Europe said or done anything that kind of creates a bit of a template?
So I would say not yet, and I want to sort of push that on when you say they're very good at regulation. What they often are is they have a heavier hand with regulation.
Yeah, maybe that's a better way to put it.
Yeah. But like I think the American regulatory state that we established, up until pretty recently with agencies like the FDA was incredibly successful. We managed to get both high levels of safety and high levels of innovation at the same time. Those weren't in conflict. They were together. The reason that the aviation industry was able to progress so quickly was because people trusted that the American government would keep it safe. And so this is sort of a point that people in the industry who sort of keep it weakening supporting the weakening of the federal government or things like that, they are fundamentally misunderstanding the situation, and they should be really careful. They might get what they want for what they're asking for, because if they get a U.S. government that is too weak to regulate AI, what they will get is also an American public that rejects AI entirely, and an industry that will die on the vine here.
30 seconds left. What has the Trump administration said on this matter, if anything?
They've started to talk about banning Chinese open weights models, and that's probably going to be my next column, because I'm not sure what I think about that, but that seems to me that is walking down a very slippery slope, because those open weights models are a big threat to the economics of our frontier labs, but they're pretty great for everyone else, so you're making a pretty striking trade there.